Is there anyone here who wishes to comment on matters that are on today's agenda? I'm not aware of any, so we'll proceed. We have a docket to approve. Is there have a motion by Councilmember Ellinger?
Mayor,
Have a second by Councilmember
Mayor,
Blues.
there are two ordinances, zone changes, number 19 and 20, that need to have motions made, please,
All right.
to have or to not have public hearings.
Number 20, 19 and 20.
Yes.
Have a motion to amend the docket, put number 19 on without a hearing. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Is there a motion with regard to number 20?
Yeah, Mayor.
Councilmember James.
I don't know what the number is, but I have a motion to add something additional to the docket. Is this the time to do that? Okay, I'll hold.
If you'll hold on for just a moment. I think we need a motion with regard to number 19. Number 20, rather. Number 20.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ellinger and a second by Councilmember Gorton to put number 20 on without a hearing. Any discussion? Then all in favor of amending the docket to put number 20 on without a hearing, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now, Councilmember James.
Thanks, Mayor. This is something handed to me by the administration. I move to place on the docket for Tuesday, December 8th, 2009 council meeting, a resolution supporting the adoption of disadvantaged business enterprise goals consistent with and conforming to the requirements of the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act of 2009 and any regulations, requirements, guidelines, or policies adopted or promulgated by the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, to the extent necessary to qualify for funding, with such goals being based upon an analysis and review of each project on an individual basis, and amending resolution number 167-91 to the extent it is consistent with this resolution. So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember James and a second by Councilmember Ellinger to add that resolution to the docket for this evening's meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, then, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Are there other motions to amend? Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to place on the docket for Tuesday, December the 8th, 2009, council meeting and ordinance authorizing the issuance of 68,100,000 general obligation public project bonds, Series 210A Build America bonds. B, 7,785,000 general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2010B tax exempt, and C, 6,670,000 general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2010C tax exempt, all of which may be increased or decreased by an amount not to exceed 10%, and to take authorized actions related to the issuance, and a resolution authorizing the advertisement for bids and the distribution of the preliminary official statement of these bonds and related authorized actions. So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Stinnett and a second by Councilmember Myers to add that ordinance and resolution to the docket for this evening's meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Are there other motions to amend the docket? Councilmember Lane.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to place on the docket for Tuesday, December 8, 2009, a resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute a change order to the contract with Schroeder Construction, Inc. for a pump station upgrade at Haley Pike Landfill, increasing the contract price by the sum of $2,400 from $356,416 to $358,816. So move.
Second. Have a motion by Councilmember Lane, second by Councilmember Martin, to amend the docket by placing that item on the docket. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Councilmember Henson, did you have a resolution to add to the docket?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to place on the docket for the December 8th council meeting a resolution authorizing the mayor to submit a grant application to the Cities of Service Coalition in the amount of $100,000 for funding a chief service officer position for 2 years for a program to increase volunteerism in the community.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Councilmember Ellinger is second Councilmember Henson's motion to amend the docket by adding that resolution. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just passed out a resolution. We've talked about this a couple different times. Out of Partner Agency Oversight Committee, we discussed before, I guess we actually started in the Budget and Finance Committee last year talking about the partner agencies that are on our health care plan that should not be on there. Letters have already gone out to the agencies quite some time ago. There's two different segments of them. The first group, I think, has already been removed, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Kelly can come up and speak to that in a second. And so right now we're just finalizing that. And then at the end of this, it's going to make it so that in the future, people can't hop onto our health care plan unless they're either an employee or a retiree of LFUCG. So I'll go ahead and read the motion and then take questions if there are any. I move to place on the docket for first reading the resolution providing that partner agencies currently participating in medical insurance plans provided by the Urban County government shall no longer be eligible to participate by the date specified in the resolution, and providing that after December 31st, 2010, only LFUCG employees and retirees shall be eligible to participate in the medical insurance plans offered by the Urban County government. So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Myers and a second by Councilmember Henson to add that resolution to the docket and to amend the docket accordingly. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of amending the docket to include that resolution, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any further motions to amend? Then I think we're now ready to vote on approving the docket as amended. All in favor of approving the docket as amended, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have a summary to approve from our December 1st work session.
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second to approve the summary from December 1st. The second was by Councilmember Lawless. The motion was by Councilmember Gordon. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the summary, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have some budget amendments. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
I have a motion by Councilmember Gordon and a second by Councilmember Myers to approve the budget amendments. Any discussion? Councilmember James.
Mayor, I received information from the administration that regarding a budget journal, and I'll just read the motion. I move that budget journal 39166-67 for Douglas Heights redevelopment be removed from consideration of budget journals on page 10 of the work session packet. This item was included with a new business item on the November 24th work session and is actually on tonight for a second reading. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember James and a second by Councilmember Gordon to remove journal number 39166-67 from the budget amendment list. Any discussion? All in favor of amending the journal, the budget amendment request list as indicated, please let it be known by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now on the discussion of the budget amendments as amended. Is there any discussion? All then in favor of approving the budget amendment request list as amended, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have a few items of new business for your consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Stinnett, a second by Councilmember Gordon to approve the new business items. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now down to the presentations.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
I'd like to move for the approval of the Neighborhood Development Fund list. I've done this early in the process because the council administrators needs time to prepare that for tonight's docket. So moved.
Very well. Have a motion and second to approve the NDF. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything further? All right. Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a report out on the November 24th meeting of the Water Resources Oversight Committee, and the council members, you have a packet with the minutes and some additional items that will be relevant to this report. I want to touch on the high points. The packet contains financials for the period ending October 31. Commissioner Rumpke made that presentation and reported no significant changes in funds. Your handout number 31 contains the monthly report on water quality construction projects, and the only significant changes since last month are item 10, the North Elkhorn Force Main, which is now online and working, and on line 36, the Bluegrass Airport Pump Station. This is an LFUCG-owned pump station that the airport wanted to move ahead with, so this is a cost-shared project. The amount in the report, $600,000, is the city's share. It's a 50-50 split. The airport will handle the bidding and the awarding, which should take place next month, and the committee will follow up on that project and those processes. Water Quality Director Martin presented an update of a draft an update of a new erosion and sediment control ordinance, which should be ready for council consideration in March of next year, and which the committee will review as it does move forward and before it comes to council. Finally, Director Martin made a presentation on the expansion area two-way wastewater facilities project. That's a $7 million project, which includes a $3.1 million grant from the state. This is a project that does really three things. It eliminates all 5 existing pump stations in the two-way sewer shed, so that the sewage flows to a new two-way pump station, which then conveys the flow to the North Elkhorn pump station, and from there either to West Hickman or to the Town Branch wastewater treatment plant. There are ongoing negotiations regarding the site of the expansion area two-way pump station, and these involve the question of the location of the pump station itself on the property that's been selected. It is bisected by the Urban Services Rural Management Services boundary line. So there is a question of location, and there is a question of whether the government might purchase the entire 80 acres or some portion of it. The committee will be receiving more information as these negotiations go forward on the site selection, on the amount of property we might buy, and on the specific location of the pump station. That essentially is my report. Be glad to try to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Blues? All right, we'll move along. Councilmember James, do you have the Special Intergovernmental Committee report?
Yes, sir. The report is in the packet, and there are no motions coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ellinger?
Thank you, Mayor. The Service Committee met on December 1st at 1 o'clock. We had 3 items that we dealt with. The first item was the address and fire gate identification and numbering. David Lewis, for Director of E911, outlined the changes of the draft that is in the packet, and the ordinance is in the packet here. And a motion came out, a motion by Councilmember Lane to move the revised ordinance to the docket for council approval, a second by Councilmember Crosby, passed without dissent, and I move forward.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion's approved.
Thank you, Mayor. The second item was the private solid waste providers. Councilmember Gordon gave some background information about this issue. She said if we are going to get to zero waste, then it'd be nice to hear from the private haulers, so to see what they offer. Steve Fees from the Environmental Quality went over the recycling services provided by the private waste haulers. There's an attachment here in the packet. He stated if they want to move in the direction of zero waste, that one of the first steps needs to be the baseline of services set. He stated that all that has been addressed at this point is the residential stream, and that 50% of the waste is generated from the commercial sector. Ms. Gorton asked, what is the plan to go to waste-free by 2020? And Mr. Fee stated that 2 of the major steps is first, establishment of recycling organics collection service as a standard for all generators, and second, the development of either volume-based pricing structure for landfill-bound waste or mandatory recycling composting of both residential and commercial operators. A motion by Councilmember Crosby to form a task force made up of representatives from the LFUCG Solid Waste, from each private hauler company, Seed Leaf, and council members, was seconded by Councilmember Henson, was passed without dissent, and I move this forward.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ellinger and a second by Councilmember Myers. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
And I've given a list to the Vice Mayor for the task force, and he will, I assume, will be moving this forward soon. And then the third issue, it was the loading and unloading. And Jim Woods, traffic engineer, stated at this point public meetings are still occurring, and it would be best to wait until after the public meeting. He said there will be a comprehensive report done after the meetings, and the report will be out possibly by early spring. We're going to keep this in committee, and when Mr. Woods will come back once the comprehensive plan is complete, and then we'll go move from there. We adjourned at 1:55, and that was the end of the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Ellinger? All right. You have in your packet the Lyric Theater monthly report. That is for information purposes only. If there are any questions, we'll be glad to address those now. All right. Let me welcome to the podium an individual familiar to all the members of the council, and that's Billy Van Pelt, who oversees the PDR program here, our Purchase of Development Rights program. Billy?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make sure that everybody received this in their mailbox. This is information that we're required to give you each year as part of our report out in terms of where we are with the PDR program. There is one additional farm that is now under contract in round 8 that is not on your list. Currently, we're at 23,700 acres plus the 126 acres that we just got a contract on today. 47% of the goal of 50,000 acres by the year 2020. And I think we'd all agree that our rural landscape is part of our global brand identity. I'll just go through these statistics briefly. Fayette County is the #2 county in Kentucky for cash farm receipts at $387 million in 2006, sold a market value worth of farm products of $504 million in 2007, the largest cattle market east of the Mississippi River with $144 million in sales in 2006, and a significant number of jobs and tax base and related infrastructure. PDR protects the factory floor of the horse industry. The numbers that are sold annually at Keeneland sort of speak for themselves. $1.1 billion sold at Keeneland and Fasig-Tipton in 2007, $437 million in revenue, and 6,300 employees. PDR also protects the factory floor of the tourism industry. There were $1.6 billion in expenditures in 2007 in Fayette County, supporting over 23,000 jobs with a payroll of over $529 million. Local tax receipts from tourism were almost $15 million in 2007, and this is largely due to the fact that we're within 1 day's driving distance of 75% of the U.S. population, and we draw people to the region as a whole. The PDR program grew out of an effort of a broad cross-section of the community that began meeting in the mid-'90s to respond to 10-acre lot development that occurred in the rural service area. There was an expansion of the urban service boundary in 1996 of 5,400 acres, but there was also quite a bit of 10-acre lot development between 1990 and 1998. We lost 4,700 acres of rural service area farmland to 10-acre lot development. If you took that 4,700 acres and made a perfect circle and put it inside the inside of New Circle Road, you could have obtained 20,000 typical residential lots, but instead we got 429. So out of that process and that the way the rural area was developed in 10-acre lots, the PDR program and the Rural Service Area Land Management Plan came into being. The goals of the PDR program are to purchase conservation easements on 50,000 acres out of 128,000 acres in the rural service area by the year 2020. So that horseshoe around the urban service area has 128,267 acres approximately in it. We want to protect 50,000 acres, but this is only 27% of the land in Fayette County. PDR protects the agricultural and horse economies by preserving large critical areas of farmland. It protects our natural scenic open space and agricultural resources, and as I mentioned, our tourism economy and unique character. Just a few of the major principles. It is a voluntary program. Most rural landowners are eligible with a minimum of 20 acres. We use a priority order of acquisition that is in the ordinance. It's on our website, and you can read through the ordinance and see how we rank our farms and how the points are assigned. The major components, the ordinance was adopted by the council in January of 2000. The ordinance also established the Fayette County Rural Land Management Board, which holds and purchases the conservation easements. That board is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. Our ranking system is a land evaluation and site assessment point system, and of course funding, which is what I'm usually talking to you about. This is our board. These are the groups that are represented, and these are the individuals that serve representing each one of these groups. As you can see, it's a broad cross-section of the community, and this board is reflective of the group that started meeting in the mid-'90s to work on the Rural Service Area Land Management Plan and the design and implementation of the PDR program. The Rural Land Management Board solicits, acquires, and holds conservation easements, prioritizes acquisitions, expends funds for these acquisitions, holds public information meetings and forums, solicits cash contributions and donated conservation easements. They also establish administrative procedures for the program. Our ranking system is heavily weighted towards agriculture. As you can see, it's weighted towards farm size, road frontage, neighbors that come together and apply in batches. Soil quality is 30 points out of the 80 that you see here, and if it's an active farm and if it has a number of agricultural improvements. It's also heavily weighted towards the environment, environmentally sensitive areas, greenway potential, linkages to other protected green spaces or conservation easements, historic resources, or reconsolidation of those farms that were 10-acred prior to the moratorium. But this is very important to note here. We also have minus points. We don't want to create the emerald choker around the urban service boundary that keeps it from expanding at the right time. I think our board acknowledges that this the urban service boundary will grow, it will expand at some time. The question is when, where, and how. So we give minus points if farms are close to the urban service area, if they're likely to be sewered, if they're at a federal highway or interstate interchange. But there are exceptions if you're a community icon or if you're in a blue line stream watershed. How do we value a conservation easement? We get an appraisal, and what they do, they look at the raw land value prior to the conservation easement and the raw land value after the conservation easement. Improvements are not included as part of this valuation. The difference between those two numbers is the value of the development right that's given up. That's the value of the conservation easement. There's a recommendation made. All of our appraisals are also reviewed by the head of the State Appraisers Board for accuracy and to make sure that they're being completed to the latest accepted standards. And the board makes the offer to the farm owner. Funding, this is probably one of the most important slides in the presentation. The funding, I think, speaks for itself. We've matched the local dollar at a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 rate, and that our match grants are exceeding our local investment, and that our annual operating budget is approximately $1.1 million per year. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've added a farm, so that's actually 210 farms now, but as the presentation states, 209 farms, 34 conservation easements, 1,570 of which were donated on 23,700 acres. 110 farms are equine, 86 general ag, and 13 other. I think the important thing to note here is that we should not get caught up in the type of farm that's being preserved, but that the land is being preserved and that the soil is being preserved, because a horse farm today can be something else in the future or vice versa. The important thing is that we're protecting the land. The current round that we're in right now, round 8, had 52 applications on 4,814 acres, and we're taking applications. I have 4 applications on my desk for round 9. The deadline is December 15th. We're also being compared to some pretty impressive places across the nation: Sonoma County, California, Marin County, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Baltimore County, Maryland, Suffolk County, New York. Suffolk County actually had the first PDR program in the U.S., and we're being recognized and compared with them as a mature, successful farmland preservation program. But farmland preservation is also a global issue. Other countries and provinces that are implementing farmland preservation programs throughout Canada, Australia, as well as China. But countries that don't have enough farmland that can't preserve it, they're actually buying farmland from other countries by the millions of acres to secure their own food supply and to secure land for the production of biofuels. These are some of the countries that are taking those types of steps to secure their own farmland. Just as a side note, there are over 90 investment funds around the world that are investing in the purchase of farmland, and productive farmland is really seen as the oil of the 21st century. 10 benefits of the PDR program. As I mentioned earlier, protects our global brand identity, protects our equine, tourism, and general agriculture industries, encourages infill and redevelopment of the urban service area, which lowers cost of services to the LFUCG, supports reduction of our carbon footprint, supports our consent decree by protecting watersheds, helps us to retain a good bond credit rating. I've discussed this point specifically with Commissioner Rumpke. Communities that have a strong sense of who they are and where they're going, that have a vision of where they're going, have much better bond credit ratings than communities that lack vision, that don't know where they're going, that have a great deal of sprawl, that don't really have a sense of place or a community identity. Our PDR program and the farmland that it protects attracts jobs and businesses because it is a quality of life issue. And as I mentioned, it does protect the base of agriculture for future food, feed, and fuel. So without any other comments from me, I'd like to take questions from you if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Van Pelt? Councilmember Myers.
I think Ms. James was first.
Councilman.
Oh,
okay.
Okay. I guess I just want to say, kind of set the stage for this budget year coming up. PDR is a good program, and I believe in what PDR does. I think this year we need to freeze PDR and not give them any more money this next budget cycle. I think we've got way too many issues that need to be dealt with, and to continue bonding money for this, even though we're getting a match, I understand all that. But I think it's time that PDR gets a break or relaxes for a year. And the reason I'm bringing this up today is because in the bond meeting the other day, when we asked you about what the $2 million that we voted to bond, you said that everything was already under contract. And so if we don't get this conversation on the table now, you also said that you were starting to look for new contracts for next year. I'm going to tell you that my vote this year is going to be that we freeze PDR and not give you any money to bond next year. So I hope that my colleagues will do the same, and that we look at, I guess one question I would have, and it's kind of rhetorical, but how many new jobs has PDR created? I understand that what you're talking about, other countries buying farmland from different countries and all that kind of stuff, but how many jobs has PDR created for our economy? And I know you're going to go back to tourism and all those things, but I think the bottom line is it's time to give PDR a relax for a year. Thank you.
Councilmember Blues.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to add to that I think that will precipitate an interesting conversation, because from my perspective, the PDR program has shaped the way we've chosen to grow, has been an absolutely essential part of our economic development program. I think it's time to continue the success we've had and to move it forward. But so, as I say, Councilmember Stinnett will warn us not to debate this issue now, but I do look forward to that conversation as we look to FY11. Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Billy. I also will look forward to that conversation. I just had a couple of comments and one question. I think on page, the funding page, if we were interested, you could give us the detail of the grants, which I find this very interesting, because I don't know of any other program that generates this much in grants. I suppose there could be a hidden one, but I don't think we found it in government. It's pretty impressive, and I personally would like to maybe see some breakdown of those state, local, and federal, the grants that you've received. If you
Councilmember Gordon, would it be appropriate? I do have that information here, or I could send it to you. Okay.
Bring it on. That'd be great. Thank you. And then one of the things, I'm a pretty visual person, and I know back in 1999 when we were discussing this, and one of the things we talked about was the mass. Thank you. That one of the goals for this PDR program was to get mass. I'm not putting that very well, but the map shows that we are meeting our goal, particularly in the northeast quadrant. We're gaining a lot of mass there, which was one of the intents. I don't know if you have any comment on that or not.
Well, yes, I do. Critical mass is very important, and we currently have 11 blocks of at least 1,000 acres or more in the rural service area. There's really no subjectivity to the conservation easement acquisition. It's all driven by the point system. And we meet usually on the first Monday of the month, and I would invite and encourage each and every one of you to attend our meetings. So we are driven by critical mass, and the top-ranked farms that receive offers from the board are based on acreage and proximity to other farms that are in the program. So from that standpoint, I think we are headed in that direction. There's the soil quality around the county varies, but there are some parts of the county that may not have 80% prime soils, but they have other cultural or environmental assets that we should protect for other reasons. And I also think it's important that, yes, we are in a difficult budget time, but I think that if you look at it the other way, as the glass is almost full, we're halfway there. And we're almost 10 years into the program. We're going to be there in 10 years, so we can really see the light at the end of the tunnel. And the reality is, the sooner we can reach the goal, the sooner that we will know how we're going to grow as a community. And I think that's another part of our vision.
Well, my final comment is, I think that is a tribute to the hard work of the people in the PDR program, you and Maynard Ferguson and the people on the Rural Land Management Board, as well as councils for all these years since 2000 who've been committed to this plan. I will say that your scoring system is being looked at as a model by the Water Quality Fee Incentives Committee. We are working on our own scoring system because we've seen how a real objective scoring system can work for ranking projects. So the Water Quality Incentives Work Group, I think maybe even someone has contacted you. I don't know if they have, but we're using this as scoring as a model. So thanks very much for being here.
Councilmember James.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Billy, for the presentation. I know it was either a year or so ago there was speculation that another surrounding county may begin a PDR program. Do you know the progress of that?
Yes, I do. Scott County has adopted a PDR ordinance, and they've also appointed their board. Woodford County has adopted an ordinance, and they've appointed their board as well.
What does this do with the competition for funding on a state and federal level?
Well, on the federal level, it's based on demand, the number of farms that you have in the pipeline, the quality of those farms. Woodford County is still early in their process. Scott County has partnered with the USDA as well, and they've received matching money as well.
So what do you see for the future? Obviously the Rural Land Management Board has probably discussed this, and if it's similar to the National Housing Trust Fund, there's a flat amount there's an amount given to a state for distribution.
Sure.
How do you see that
That
relationship
varies from
working?
year to year. And this is part of the farm bill. It's part of food security. So, in terms of the long-term funding, we feel pretty good about that, but it does vary from year to year in terms of what Kentucky's allocation is.
Okay. So the USDA is based on food security, and you talked during your presentation about how you don't really want us to focus on the type of farm. You really think green space is what we need to be, or as long as it's
Productive land that's
Okay.
available for various types of farming operations.
okay. So if Scott County or Woodford County is more in the production of food-based industry versus some other type of agriculture, which I don't know what those percentages are, but does that make them more apt to get the USDA funding? And
Well, I think Woodford County is the number one ag county in the state, but they are very early on in their process. So in the near future, I think it's a good thing that we're preserving farmland regionally, because I think that as we plan as a region, we're going to be protecting farmland as a region and growing as a region. And as soon as we identify those areas where we're going to preserve farmland, then we can identify areas where we're going to grow.
Okay.
So I think it's a win-win that these other counties are establishing their own programs.
Okay. And I remember having this conversation years ago, but I know, every day, especially when belt tightening is happening, it's a new opportunity to discuss this again. But please explain to me and to anyone watching who's brand new to the PDR program, why doesn't zoning take care of this as opposed to paying property owners?
Because zoning can be changed with 8 votes on a Thursday night, and a conservation easement is permanent.
Okay.
So in other words, we had a 10-acre minimum from 1964 to 1998, and that was changed with 8 votes to a 40-acre minimum. But we can vote again and go back to a 10-acre minimum.
Okay.
So the conservation easement is what's protecting the land.
Right. Okay. I guess my thought is, and I'll give it back to Mayor, is, the budget also can be changed with 8 votes of the council. So it really doesn't take that much of a sting out of it when you look at it. It just, I don't know, it just really doesn't help balance it for me. I think I'll have to be with Councilmember Myers in this next budget cycle, and not just because of that, but because also part of the benefits of PDR is encourages infill and redevelopment, and we're not investing in infill and redevelopment. We're not giving that balance. So if we're not developing there, we're paying people for not developing their property there, and we're expecting development to happen on the inside. We're not investing any money there.
One thing I'll just add, that this land outside the urban service boundary can't be developed for non-ag uses. What we're doing is we're keeping it from being subdivided into 40-acre tracts, and we're limiting impervious area. But if you're going to focus on infill and redevelopment and jobs and revitalizing the core, I think you have to have something to attract people here and something to keep people here, and that's definitely our brand that we talked about earlier, and it's the unique rural landscape we have, because that is our business card.
For some it is. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Lane.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your update, Billy. Could you just answer a couple of questions for me? I think this would be of interest to the viewing public out there. With regard to your operating costs for the PDR program, and I don't want to brag on you, but you've reduced a lot of those costs and used a lot of technology to make it more efficient. Just discuss that for a second.
Well, as part of our a very positive thing that happened as an outcome of the management audit, we were combined with the Department of Public Works and Development, and we share staff in that department, which has helped a great deal. We are utilizing, we're sharing office space, we're sharing supplies. So from that standpoint, our operating budget was completely eliminated from our FY10 budget request. We're doing everything we can to minimize costs. When I started with the program, 7 years ago, there were 4 employees in PDR. So we've greatly reduced the cost of the program, and I think there were a number of employees involved because we didn't know what we were going to need. But now that we sort of have a pattern and a rhythm for how the program is going to operate, and we have everyone in accounting and in finance and in GIS, and that assists me in operating the program, has enabled us to reduce those costs.
The other question I had, you have been very successful in receiving federal grants. What do you attribute that to, that we've been so successful in that area and getting matching money for the money we're putting up Urban County government?
Well, the relationship that we've developed with the feds has taken 8 years. We've gone from $150,000 in 2001 to $2 million today, and that's ebbed and flowed over the course of our 8-year relationship. But I think it's definitely based on our track record. It's based on the quality of the soils that we're preserving. We have the second fastest closing rate of any farmland preservation program that they fund in the United States, and at our rate that we get farms under easement. And so that's what they like to brag on their success too. They like to partner with someone that's going to make them look good.
Okay. That's my last question. I think I'd like just to make a slight comment about what our commitment's been to the infill and redevelopment in downtown. And I think if you look at Limestone, Main Street, and Vine Street, we just approved streetscape plans there, which probably about $25 million worth of investment in the heart of downtown. I would say that's a significant investment, and we were able to get matching funds on many of those items. So that's been very good. And then I think also we've approved 3 TIF programs. We have a 4th one in the pipeline. That's another commitment to the downtown infill area. And I feel that, a balance between the rural area and infill and redevelopment is appropriate. I strongly support the PDR program, and I thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
That's all I've got, Billy.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Gray. Thank you, Mayor. I think it's the appropriate thing is to thank those who present to us, and I'll do that as well today, Billy. I do want to comment on the interesting or compelling thing about this conversation is the success. And I know I myself have often cited the leadership that you've provided in the management of this program and the advocacy, those who have advocated for it as a pretty good example of effective advocacy and management. And what we have also talked about, Frank, glad to see you here, because you and I have had several conversations about, and Billy, we have too, and I think about this so important balance and how important it is to focus intentionally, deliberately, creatively, imaginatively on the core, which is what I think we're hearing today, is that we haven't seen the same level of attention, of effective advocacy for FOR, for urban infill and development. And I, for one, am okay fully with the suggestion that we have to have this conversation, because, sometimes regrettably, it's a success that causes us to examine things that we otherwise might not. And so we've got to take the blinders off and look at how we are doing what we're doing
where we're going with the entire strategy of preserving the rural landscape and that brand, and at the same time building the core. And you all have been willing to do that, and I, for one, at least appreciate it. So thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Van Pelt? All right, thank you very much. Takes us down to council reports. Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Just have, on behalf of Councilman Court, a couple of walk-ons for NDF tonight. I believe those are already approved, but I want to get these two on there. The first one is to add Bluegrass Community Foundation's in the amount of $1,500 to be used to assist in building a healthier Lexington through promotion of recreation, leisure opportunities, and facilities of Fayette County. And the second one to add to the NDF was for Stonewall Community Association enhancement of lighting in their neighborhood for $500. So moved.
Have a motion and second to add those two items to the NDF list. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Crosby.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things as well. Last week at the end of our work session, we had some discussion on on an item that was not on the agenda, and I went through Robert's rules. I was trying to find out whether or not there was anything in there that said that we cannot discuss anything that is or is not on the agenda, and I couldn't find anything. So I asked our clerk if she could do some research for us, and I don't know that she could really find anything. I don't know if she's here, so in case we have any questions, I think that possibly we might need to try and define this a little better. So if it comes up again, I could find that if we have a special meeting, we cannot. It's clearly defined that if we have a special council meeting, that we cannot discuss anything that is not on the agenda during a special council meeting, but not during a regular council meeting. And I don't know if Susan wants to comment any further on this, but I think that I know that she's contacted maybe some other cities that are comparable to us in this regard, and I don't know if you have any information to share, but it might be worth us trying to more clearly define what we do in case this comes up again.
I spoke with 10 different second and third class cities across Kentucky, and there's about 4 different ways that was dealt with. Two cities actually put a notation on the docket to the effect that either they will allow a person to speak, but that no staff or council is going to respond, and the other puts the action on there, and they actually discuss the items, but they don't make any action. They don't take any action. But one city actually and put it into their rules and procedures, where they added it where that the public comment would be allowed, but that there would not be any motion or action taken. There's 2 cities that actually have a complaint or request for service forms that they have available at the council meetings, and they allow the public to speak. And what they do is they ask the public to fill out the forms, and then at the end of the meeting, then the form is sent on to the appropriate division or form of area of government that's dealing with that for responses or action. And then the remainder of the cities, they pretty much allow the discussion, and there is nothing written in their parliamentary procedures to that effect. There's one other that actually they require a motion to be made in order for discussion to take place.
It seems like there's several different options we have available to us, and maybe too much for us to discuss during a work session. So maybe I could just make the motion that we take this up after break and put it into intergovernmental committee to try and find the best option for us to handle this. So I'll make a motion that we put this in intergovernmental committee, and maybe ask the clerk at that time if she could come back and we can determine what's the best option for us. So maybe.
I have a motion by Councilmember Crosby and a second by Councilmember Ellinger to refer the item of public comment and appropriate action to the intergovernmental committee. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
And then also regarding what came up last Thursday night, it was my understanding that we were going to have a presentation on that today at work session, and I was just curious, are we having that presentation? I know we got some information from Commissioner Rumpke, but I don't know if when is that formal presentation going to be?
Commissioner Bennett was going to make that as part of the mayor's report.
Excuse me?
The mayor's report.
Okay, great, thank you. And then also, I'm looking forward to having you with me tomorrow afternoon on the District 7th ride-along. And lastly, I just want to congratulate the Lexington Christian Academy Eagles for winning the state football championship this weekend. I'm hoping after the break, this is their first state football championship. They've only had a program for 8 years, and I'm hoping maybe after the break, usually we try to get programs that win state championships in, so I'm hoping Artie, maybe we can get Coach Raines and some of the team in after we get back from break. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a series of announcements of upcoming events starting tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Tomorrow, December the 9th, the St. Martin's Village Christmas Party will take place in the Park Shelter in Whitney Young Park. On Thursday night, December 10th, 6 p.m., the meeting for the Georgetown Street Neighborhood Association and St. Martin's Village with officials from LFUCG and Bluegrass Community and Technical College to update and inform the neighborhoods on the changes that are coming to their direct area. As Bluegrass Community and Technical College prepares to move to what is now the Eastern State Hospital campus, it's really important that all the neighbors immediately surrounding the college have an idea of how the college is going to impact them, the challenges, the opportunities, and the ways that they can be involved in the planning for this transition. And the first step in that is being well informed. So I encourage all the residents of the neighborhood to come to this meeting, 6 p.m. in the O'Rear Center in Douglas Park. That's tomorrow night. At 7 p.m. tomorrow night, the Melrose Oak Park Neighborhood Association will meet for their monthly meeting in Thompson Road Baptist Church. Saturday, December 12th, a couple of events. The 6th annual senior luncheon sponsored by the Green Acres, Howell Creek, and Breckenridge Neighborhood Association will take place at 1 p.m. at the Park Community Center on LaSalle Drive. For further information about that event, let me give you a couple of phone numbers where you can get that update. 299-0356 or 539-2107. That's for information on the annual senior luncheon in Green Acres Park. The same evening, 6 p.m., the Highland Neighborhood Association will host its annual Christmas party at the Community Center in the park on Mark Avenue. Then, next Monday evening, December 14th, the Radcliffe Marlboro Holiday Reception. Leesway neighborhood will meet at Bracktown Church with the contractor for the sewering project that will begin this winter in the neighborhood. This is an important meeting to inform the neighbors of what will be a relatively brief, but of course, a project that's going to cause some disruption. So to meet with the contractor and with our engineers and water quality people to get the information on the timeline, on the details of the project, and to answer questions. Again, 7 p.m., Monday, December 14, in Bracktown Church. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to announce that the Historic South Hill Neighborhood Association meeting is at 6 p.m. tonight at the First United Methodist Church. And I regret I won't be able to attend because we have a council meeting. Also, there is a tree in front of Buddy's in Chevy Chase and in front of Joseph Beth that has wishes on it from elderly people in the community that, for the most part, they're very simple wishes. They're for Christmas gifts. So if you're around there, please stop and take one of those. Many of them don't have family or other support systems. So also on Sunday, December the 13th, on the porch of 54 Mintel Park, the Buckner family will be having their annual cocoa and confection sale to benefit the Salvation Army, and the Buckner children will be taking that money and depositing it into the red kettle, the Salvation Army. And then on a more serious note, I saw that there was a fire last night where I believe 8 Transy students live, and by chance one of them was awake and was able to get all of them out safely, but it was one of those tragedies that could have been far worse. And so just putting that out there. Thank you.
Councilmember Henson.
Thank you, Mayor. Since this is our last meeting before our break, I just wanted to wish everyone a happy holiday and New Year. I'm sure I'll talk to some of you and maybe see you, but if not, I just wanted to send those wishes along. And I wanted to give the results of the Salvation Army bell ringing.
Oh, great.
I see Chief Hendricks back there, so I really appreciate everyone that helped. But we raised $637.90 total. We do have more money than that, but they are unable to locate Vice Mayor Gray's kettle.
Yeah, and you just had to tell that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the overall winner was Councilmember Myers. So he did real good. And he actually, in 1 hour, raised $157.77. So thanks to all of you.
It ain't hype if you deliver, is it? Congratulations, well done.
Yeah, so, all right. Someone told me that moving right along.
Congratulations. And Councilmember Henson, thanks for all the time you devoted to being there and making sure everybody was showing up at the appointed time and making it work. Thanks. Councilmember James.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of announcements. Tonight at 7 o'clock at the Living Arts and Science Center, the Martin Luther King Neighborhood and the William Wells Brown Neighborhood Associations will have a joint meeting. This is a holiday celebration as well as a scarf and hat donation drive for the LTMS students. So they're doing a goodwill project as part of their holiday celebration. So I appreciate those neighborhoods and try to make it out there at 7 o'clock and enjoy that camaraderie there. Also wanted to remind council members, mayor, anyone else that's interested, on Thursday, December 10th, this Thursday, 10 a.m., 5th floor conference room here at the Government Center, we will have the paratransit transportation meeting. This will have stakeholders. Anyone that deals with anything with paratransit has been invited. We've sent out a questionnaire to try to progress the meeting. Lex Tran will be there to talk about the transportation dollars, federal dollars, and the guidelines of that, and we'll talk about how we can fill in the gaps where it pertains to our paratransit here. So please show up there. We're expecting it to be about a 2-hour meeting at 10 a.m. on Thursday in the fifth floor conference room. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. December 15th, which is next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. at the Gainesway Community Center over off of Center Parkway. The 8th District is having its 8th District potluck for this Christmas holiday season, and everybody's invited, even if you don't live in the 8th District. You just have to bring some type of food with you or drink or something. So we look forward to everybody coming out for that. And I just wanted to say thank you to Councilmember Henson for putting that together. It was a lot of fun to do that, to ring the bell for an hour, and I hope we can actually do that again before Christmas is over and they stop doing that. But it was really fun and exciting to do, so thank you very much.
Is this best 2 out of 3? Or
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Does any other council member wish to make a report? All right. I have a few odds and ends. Let me begin by requesting motion to approve the various appointments that have been tendered to you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lane, second by Councilmember James. Any discussion? Councilmember Crosby.
I don't have any discussion on any of the appointments specifically. I would just like to request, because once again, when I was going through looking at the appointments and the forms that they filled out, some of them are not complete. I don't have any intention because I actually know the people personally, so I feel comfortable with them. But I would just like to request that when you are turning them into us, that if they are asked to give references, that they fill out their references. There are people on here who haven't completely filled out the forms, and I don't see what the purpose is if we're going to ask them to fill it out and they don't completely fill it out. You can find them if you're looking under the Lyric Theater. There are a few under there who have not, but I feel comfortable with the appointments who did not fill them out because I personally know them. So I just feel like that oftentimes we get forms that aren't complete, and I know that I've brought this up several times, so could we please just make sure through the process, it just makes it a little easier for us when we're having to vote on them if they're complete forms. Thank you.
We have been trying to do a more complete job of encouraging people to get their information to us. In some instances, it has been much slower. The Lyric is one example of that, and we thought it was important to try to go ahead and bring forward these recommendations because there is some work, especially for that board and the Water Quality Appeals Board.
Well, and I understand that it's hard because sometimes you're having to rely on people to fill this out, but if they can't fill out the form and do it, then, and you've requested them to do it, then I would almost hold it up before bringing it forward, because if you're asking them to do something, if they just don't do it and they've forgotten, it's one thing, but if they're just not going to do it, then in the future, probably I would be hesitant to probably put them through.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All then in favor of approving the recommended appointments, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Second, I wanted to address the issue that Councilmember Lawless brought up a few moments ago, and that was about the fire that took place over on North Broadway. I have gotten a report from our folks in code enforcement, and you may be interested to know that that property has today been condemned because it consisted of several fire code violations along the lines that we have been trying to identify and prosecute as rapidly as we can. This is a good example to raise again about the enormous importance of these fire code violations. To the extent you are aware of properties in your districts that you think may be inappropriately operating as boarding houses or lodging houses, please give us those addresses and we will try to proceed with inspections as promptly as we can. Unfortunately, we don't have an army of inspectors and we can't get around to all of them as rapidly as we would like. And we have been trying to work with the Home Builders Association, the University Housing Association, and other groups in the community to make them aware of their obligations. Unfortunately, as we saw in this particular instance, there appear to be a number of people who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing yet. And to the extent we can encourage them to abide by, especially the fire code and hopefully the zoning code requirements as well, we will do what we can to do so. So give us addresses of places that you think may be operating inappropriately, and we will follow up. The third thing, in addition to the appointments and the North Broadway situation, I have left in your boxes, or folks on my staff have left in your boxes this afternoon, a proposed ordinance which I would appreciate your considering over the break. It is an ordinance that is designed to require folks who lobby Urban County government to file reports disclosing the individuals or entities for whom they are lobbying and what matters they are lobbying about. The general idea is to try to parallel the state requirements to the fullest extent possible so that it will be a framework that is familiar to those people who lobby on the state level. But I would appreciate you taking a look at that over the break. It's not something that we need to try to address today, but when we get back, I would appreciate your feedback on how that proposed ordinance might be improved so that we could go ahead and address that the first part of the year. And then last but not least, the issue that Councilmember Crosby raised a few moments ago. I've asked Commissioner Bennett to give you just a little bit of a rundown on the vacation time issues that were brought up last week, and then we'll answer whatever questions you may have.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. I don't have a formal presentation for you. This is a fairly, at least on the face of it, fairly simple issue. What we've had the last 3 years leading up to this year are situations in the Division of Enhanced 911 where employees have accrued excess vacation time over and above the amount the ordinances allow them to carry over, and council has granted in each of those 3 years special dispensation to let them carry over the extra hours for 1 quarter into the new fiscal year. Any hours that they don't use by the end of that quarter are then forfeited or lost. As I said, on the surface, it seems to be a fairly simple issue. What I would remind you is this is not an Enhanced 911 issue. This is a government-wide issue. The Division of Enhanced 911 is not the only division where this occurs. And I want to make sure that the employees in that division know that my decision not to recommend that you do the extension again this year was not aimed at them, but it was an effort to bring equity among all the employees of the government. When I stood here about this time last year and asked you to extend their vacation times, I committed to you at that time that I wouldn't be back asking you to do it again. We did it for 3 years. It continued, and it put them really at an advantage over all the other employees in the government. As of today, there are over 200 other employees in the government, other civil service employees, who have over 200 hours of vacation time accrued. The maximum that can be carried over is 168. Some of them may be able to use their time and get down to the 168. Others probably won't. And that 200 plus is only the people who have more than 200 hours. People between the 168 cutoff and 200, there is a substantial number of those. So it really becomes an equity issue. The ordinance, Section 21-33 of the Code of Ordinances, only permits a carryover of 168 hours. And that's been in existence since 1978. As I said, council has granted the special exemption for the last 3 years. The only other instance that I'm aware of during that period of time the council has granted an exception is for the people who were working on what was then called the STARS project, what's now Project Synergy, PeopleSoft, due to the exorbitant amount of time those people were putting in and not being able to take their time. As far as leave accruals, most of the people who are in the Division of 911, Enhanced 911, that have talked to you, accrue 168 hours vacation each year. They accrue 120 hours of holiday time. Then that's 4 weeks worth of vacation time. 120 hours worth of holiday time, that's an additional 3 weeks. And they accrue the holiday time because one of two things happens. Either because of the schedule they're working that day, or the holiday is their regular day off. So they don't get to take it off as a normal employee would, so they accrue it. So that's 7 weeks worth of time each year that the employee has to take, if they've carried over all their time into that year, that they have to take without losing any. What you've been asked to approve by the employees this year, as far as carryover, is an average of 2 weeks vacation time. The carryover is as little as 5 hours in one instance. It's as much as 4 weeks in another instance. Holiday and vacation time, and I want to make sure you understand that we've not attempted to penalize these employees and keep them from taking their time off this year. I want you to understand that we've tried to work with them to get them time off. Time off in this location has averaged right at 6 weeks vacation and holiday time this year, average. That ranges from as little as 3 weeks for one employee up to 9 weeks for another. So it's not as if we've consciously gone into this trying to penalize these folks and not let them have some time off with their families, time off to relax and clear their heads. We all need that. So the real issue is, to date, to my knowledge, there has never been a blanket extension of the vacation leave carryover cutoff. We also have cutoffs on holiday time. We also have cutoffs on compensatory time for the exempt employees. So each of these banks of leave has a maximum amount of time each of the employees can carry over from year to year. It's 168 hours for vacation, 80 hours for holiday, and 80 hours for comp time. And the comp time is pay period to pay period. So people who put in a lot of hours every pay period lose time, the way these employees potentially would lose time at the end of the year with the vacation cutoff. In the end, it's council decision. So I'll leave it in your hands, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information to help you make an informed decision. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there questions for Commissioner Bennett? Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner, thank you for presenting this to us today. I have a quick question. When you started out talking about the ordinance, it sounded like you said that the ordinance allowed persons to roll over time for the first quarter.
It allows employees to carry over from year to year a maximum of 168 hours vacation time. If an employee at the end of the calendar year has accrued 200 hours, for example, they lose the difference between the 168 and the 200 if they haven't taken it.
You mentioned something about the first quarter, though. Could you?
I'm sorry. In the case of the Enhanced 911 employees for the last 3 years, Council has extended the cutoff date from December 31st to the following March 31st. So they've effectively given them an additional 3 months to take off the excess balance that they had at the end of the calendar year. At the end of that 3 months, if they haven't been able to take the excess time, they lose it or have lost it.
So is that what happened, though?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, the employees were able to take all their excess time during that 3-month period. In some cases, the employees actually lost time at the end of that 3-month period. Not in many cases, but in a few cases.
Okay, and so for the employees who lost time during that first quarter, and they still were able to accrue enough hours in that year that they had to roll over again the next year?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop there and let other people ask some questions. I may have some later questions.
Okay, one additional thing I'd like to add about the 3 years during which the extension was given. As I said, the time they were allowed to carry over the time and use an extra 3 months to try to take it off. If they separated from service during that 3 months, they didn't get paid for the excess time. So they were still limited to the 168 hours as far as the payout at retirement or at resignation.
Can I ask a follow-up real quick? Are there enough employees in that department that if all those employees that rolled over and had that first quarter to take the time off, would they be able to take off the time that they had to take off?
If it's rolled into the first quarter of calendar 10, I don't know, frankly. because we have we have at least one vacancy in one of the key slots. We've had one employee who's been off for an extended period of time for other reasons. So I can't commit that if we allow them additional quarter, that all of them will still get to use their time. It'll be a scheduling challenge.
Okay, I'm thinking more in the past, I'm not making that recommendation for this coming year.
Okay.
But in the past, have there been enough employees that the people who rolled over, that we allowed to roll over for that first quarter, they were allowed to take it off during that quarter?
Typically, yes. As I said, other than a couple or three isolated instances, they typically were allowed to take it off during that quarter.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lawless.
Thank you. I'm curious to know, it sounds like you're understaffed.
In some cases, yes, and it's been some staffing challenges over the years. I won't deny that.
And so, because of it being understaffed, these people were not able to take their vacation.
Yes.
And these are positions that are essential, like fire and police, unlike a lot of other employees where if if they have to take some time off, it's easy to get somebody to do their job for them. These are highly trained, specially trained people, and only they can do the job.
It's becoming more of a challenge as we move forward, not only in 911 but in other divisions. As we face budget challenges, as we hold vacant positions open and don't fill them, we have a smaller employee pool to get what we all hope is the same amount of work done. So it's becoming more of a challenge government-wide to be able to cover for times off without having to pay overtime, which obviously is a budget impact. So, yes, in their case, that certainly is the situation, but it has become and will become more, I think, the norm across government, that we have those challenges.
Well, across government, I understand, and we're in a really tight situation. But I also know, having been a crisis line, staffed a crisis line for over 30 years, and the fact that they can't say, oh, well, I've got vacation time, I'm going to take it, and 911 not being there, or somebody from another department being able to fill in for them because they're not trained, that this is a special circumstance. And it concerns me that our 911 employees are understaffed and that additional stress and burden is placed on the existing employees by not being able to take time off, and also the stress they're under by staffing that phone.
I would ask you to keep in mind, though, it's not that they're not able to take time off. They've taken time off. They haven't been able to take the equivalent of 2 years' worth of time off in 1 year. But when you've got employees taking off 9 weeks, that's a pretty sizable chunk of time.
I don't understand. What do you mean the equivalent of 2 years?
If you let them carry over from 1 year to the next,
okay,
plus what they earn during the year they carry that into, you could potentially have the equivalent of 2 years' worth of time that the employee would be trying to take off during that 1 year, or at the end of that year, they're going to have an excess amount of time to roll to the following year. And you basically have a perpetual issue.
How much time, how many employees were able to take their time, or who weren't able to take their time due to lack of staffing?
There are 12 that without an extension would lose some vacation time in Enhanced 911.
And they lost that because there weren't adequate people to do the job.
Overall, yes. In some isolated situations, I would debate that with you, but overall, yes.
So basically, they gave up something pretty substantial to protect our city. And I think that when we look at not hiring and not filling and freezing positions, these are just the kind of positions that we can't afford not to. And, you know, burnout and staffing these 911 lines, we need to take care of those employees. So I'd like to hear more about what can be done so that they can take adequate time off, so that they can continue to have a healthy, functional family life and not burn out. Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Bennett, were you, it seems to me there was a year when the council approved community corrections carrying over, and it was before they were covered by collective bargaining.
Yes.
I don't know if you were the
I think that
commissioner
was
at
probably
time.
back in the early 2000s, is my
So-
guess. Back during the periods when they were having roughly 40% turnover rates.
And they had mandatory overtime.
Correct. And I think that, as I recall, there was only 1 year where that was approved.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think it was.
When an employee is hired, what is the agreement that the government strikes with them in terms of vacation time?
For the first 10 years of their employment, typically, they earn 10 hours per month, 3 weeks per year vacation time. They can carry over 168 hours of that from year to year.
And
that's
do
it.
we,
Then, after 10 years, they accrue annual leave at the rate of 14 hours per month, or 168 hours per year.
do we, the government, in the agreement, do we tell them they'll be able to take vacation time, or simply that they'll be able to earn it? Do we give any hope that if I sit down to be hired today, am I given any hope that I will be able to take my vacation time, or simply that I'll earn it?
I think the only guarantee you have is that you'll earn it. I don't know that there's a guarantee that given staffing demands, you'll be able to take it off.
And back to
Nothing in writing that I'm aware of.
a point that was already touched on, how many of the E911 employees have been denied a request for vacation time? They asked to take off and they were denied it.
I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is the majority of these 12.
Okay. Well, I think my opinion is, as a government, if we tell people they can earn vacation time, we should allow them the opportunity to take it.
And we do, Councilmember Gordon.
But if we're denying it to some people, then I think what that means is what Councilmember Lawless said, is we're understaffed in a critical area. And so, I realize the economic times we're in, but I think it's basically a fairness issue to our employees that if they request vacation time and it doesn't compromise the workings of the division, they should get it off. And if it does compromise it, then we need to be sure we're properly staffed there. So thank you for being here.
Councilmember Henson.
Thank you, Mayor. When a person is hired, is the vacation hours the dollar amount in the budget for personnel cost?
I would say no, and I would say that no only because typically, if you're staffed appropriately and an employee takes vacation time, the cost of that vacation time is basically part of the salary that's in there. There's not a separate line item in the budget for vacation time or the cost of vacation time that I'm aware of.
I guess I was thinking where they are, the 911 call center is different from other divisions because they have to be there 24/7. They have no choice. And if they're denied vacation because of the understaffing or whatever, I would just think there would be an alternative, like if they're going to lose it, then they get a certain percentage in dollars of the dollar amount or something like that. I don't know what other cities do, but I see them as being unique to the government because, other divisions are on call or might have to work a Saturday or Sunday, but they have to be manned 24/7, just like a hospital or the police, fire, so forth, but they've got collective bargaining. So, I don't know, I don't know if we could put this in committee to look at it, or, you know, I want to be fair to all government employees, but they have a unique situation. Thank you.
Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly agree of the severity of the position they carry, and if we lose staffing or if we don't have staffing, and the critical need to fill those positions. I guess I've got a couple practical questions. One, if council is to grant this for the first quarter, the first 90 days of the fiscal year, how are we going to allow, I mean, I'm looking down the list. We have 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks. I mean, how are we going to allow them all to actually use the time practically?
As a practical matter, I don't know that we can. I mean, we'll work with them to the extent we can, but as a practical matter, I don't know that we can give them a promise that during this next quarter, you're going to be able to take all these hours off.
I mean, that's 480 work hours for the first 90 days, and I don't know how you would even schedule that. I don't know if you all, have you even tried? I mean, if we grant that, obviously you're going to have to figure out a way. Have you all looked at that?
Not at this point, because we hadn't anticipated the extension.
Well, and you alluded to at the beginning of your comments that last year you said this would be the last time you're coming back to us. Well, that's my point is why are you coming back today? Why are we having this conversation? I know you're not coming back and asking for it,
right,
but we still got the problem. We still got management issues in 911. I know you and I have talked about it for 3 years now. Since we created this division 5 years ago, I think now it's maybe 6. We pulled it from fire, we pulled it from police. This is just another issue that goes into the pot of problems we're having in 911. You know, Councilmember Henson alluded to putting this issue into committee, but, you know, we've had this is just another issue in this area. So what are we going to do the next 12 months not to have this happen again? What's going to change between now and next year?
If we carry it over or if we don't.
Either way. I mean, either way, it doesn't matter, because if we do carry it over, they can't use it anyway. There's not enough days in the week to be able to get everyone off. But what's going to change between now and next time this year, regardless of our decision?
In terms of staffing, frankly, I don't know. Hopefully, we're going to have the person back who's been on extended leave. That provides some relief and gives us some ability to get some people off. We have one position we had been holding open. Depending on budgetary constraints, we'll look at filling that. Which would give us, as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, 5. The primary issues are in the supervisor ranks, which would give us at that point 5 supervisors and a location manager. And where we are right now is basically 3 supervisors, which doesn't give relief for people to be able to get off.
Would you mind stepping here to the microphone?
You may remember me from last week. My name's Tracy Wells. Since he asked, I'll offer up, it's always been, I've worked in this division since 96, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't, but off the top of my head, nobody, it's long enough to, to have an opinion on this, but in the whole time I've worked for, whether it was police or combined unit, because I started out my career as a police dispatcher, we've never really had what I would consider, if you're asking me, a person that's in the trenches every day, enough personnel where if you had a couple people wanting off and somebody else calling sick, that it wouldn't create an issue of some sort or another. So if you're asking my personal opinion, even if those persons that have been out on, whatever issues they've had, come back from work, we could always still use more. I always find it ironic when I read the newspaper about staffing shortages with police and fire, but I'm thinking the little known secret is the people that answer your phones. I mean, they have 500. We have maybe 20. So if you don't have enough people to answer the phones, it's not going to matter how many police and fire you have if they can't get the calls to come in. We've always been critically understaffed. It's just, I think now it's become such a huge problem because of other things. And now I'm at fire where it's even more of a problem. Police personnel have not been affected by this. It's just the fire personnel that have been. And it's, I gave the notes that it's not a matter of I've been planning poor. I put in for time at the beginning of the year when I'm told, as soon as I'm told I can put in for time, I put in for time. And I've had one vacation this year, and in the middle of that vacation, I got denied one day. I went to the beach. I was actually considering coming home early. This is what happened. I was going to leave the beach, drive home by myself with my young son, leave the rest of the family there at the beach to be back on the one day that I got denied of being off. Well, as it turned out, I got a second-degree sunburn and ended up having to call out sick. So I ended up not having to drive home. I mean, I couldn't drive home. You can't drive home from Delaware with a second-degree sunburn, and I had a migraine headache. But that's the only time that I've had more than 5 days off this last year. The rest of the time, all my time has either been given in increments. Now, I suggest to you, if you say, this is the time I need off for vacation or any type of break of whatever, and I'm really not complaining. I love my job, and I've done what I had, to help, because when it's come to me, okay, this is how we're going to get you some time off. You can come be off from 10, but we need you to be at work at 4 in the morning. What kind of vacation is that to you, I suggest, if you're at home with your family? I still work a night shift. I have unique problems that somebody working day shift may not. I still have to plan on sleeping. I have to get some sort of rest before I go into work. So if I'm off on vacation but still have to be at work at 4 a.m., I still have to plan on the amount of rest. I can't stay up all day. So it's not really been that much a vacation or a holiday time. And I know it's really, I suggest that it's not really his fault or Mr. Lucas's fault. It's just, it's always been a problem. And I think now it's just something that people are recognizing more, because I'm not typically one to complain. And it's just been, recently that it's become enough of an issue where, because this is the first time that I've ever been told you're not going to get your time. And it's not like I've ever carried any over beyond the 168. I've always been able to get it down to the 168. So this is all newly accrued time this last year. But, I'm not going to, and to think something different's going to happen next year, but this is, because if it's going to make, I think the thought here is if we say, okay, that's it, 168, that's going to make it better, and next year we won't have to do this to this division, I put before you that that's probably not going to be the case. Because unless you can, to do my job, and this is not ego, trust me, I just personal observations, you can hire a lot of people, and you sit them down in front of a dispatch console, and the first time somebody says shots fired, somebody just tried to run over me, it takes a very unique individual to be able to sit there at that radio console and, be able to do that. So I suggest out of 10 people that you hire, maybe one would be able to do it. So I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I know that there has to be something differently done, but what that is, I just don't know.
Ms. Wells?
Is this the appropriate time to ask any more questions of me about?
Well, you had indicated a desire to speak on this subject, and I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to say. Now would be a good time to do it.
I'm already up here. Just that last week somebody asked me about the, did you put in time? I'm like, yes, I put in time, but I got way more denials than I got approvals. Like she said, and to compare, I'm sorry, all due respect, but to suggest that I'm just like an office secretary that can, if you say, if you told somebody and those other people that are facing losing time, more than likely they're going to get it down before December 31st. And this is an issue that you all want to flesh out further and put it off until next year. It's going to be too late for me, because this is something that happens at December 31st. So I would, respectfully request that you all make a decision sometime before the end of the year, because I've already had an employee quit. I had an employee quit the other day because, for lots of reasons, but I think primarily because she quit giving me leave submittals several months ago, because every time she would give them to me, I asked for them, they give them to me, and then I would give them back denied, because there's not enough people to do it. Now, alternatively, I would rather have some time off, because it is very stressful, and I could really use some time off. But I would not be opposed to money. I could use the money just as well as anything. To just take it away from me, I'm not going to go away, and I'm not going to be happy with that. And I suggest, I can't imagine that any of my coworkers are going to be satisfied with that. So, something's got to give.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stennett.
Thank you. Ms. Wells, before you sit down, how many weeks of vacation or how many days have you used this year? You said 5? You only used 5?
Ms. Wells, please go back to the mic.
I just want to make sure the information we got before us is accurate.
if you.
Approximate, I don't need exact.
Approximate, gosh, I don't know.
I've had more than 5.
I've had the, whatever is above the 80 hours that you get, because I've got my holiday time down below. But as in, if you're going by what the intended use of holiday or vacation time is, I can only think of one time where I've had not even 5 days approved off in a row, just 5 days that I wasn't at work.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
Okay.
I just want to make sure the information
I
we're
hope
looking
that
at.
answers your question.
It does, because, I mean, the information we've been given has shown everyone's range from 3 to 9 weeks.
I have 10 days
Okay.
of vacation time.
And, you know, just to the point the Commissioner made, too, at the beginning of his comments, this is done by ordinance. This is not done by anything else, and that's something this council probably needs to take a look at, is this ordinance and carryover. But understanding, though, that any change in it will affect every employee in government, unless there's a way the law department wants to figure out to single out a group of employees right now that we can't, because they're all under the same civil service system. We can amend this policy of our vacation time, obviously, but again, it's done by ordinance, and it's not an arbitrary decision that we have made one way or another. So, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Crosby.
Yeah, I agree with some of what Councilmember Stinnett, as far as I believe that this is one of the best examples of terrible management. It's unbelievable that we have people being denied time and time again, where they have turned in asking for time that they've earned, and we've seen examples. We've gotten multiple emails where they've been turned in for time off, and they've been denied and denied and denied. So it's impossible for them to take the time off that they have earned. Like Councilmember Gordon said, they're set up for failure. We have an ordinance in place, but we can't let these employees utilize what they're allowed within the ordinance. It's set up for failure because of the understaffing in their department. So it's set up for failure, which to me is a management issue. And then it puts us in a position to where we're having to change an ordinance because of poor management of one division. I don't know what the answer is, but clearly there's a problem here. And I don't know what the answer is. It's disturbing to me also when I see that people are turning in for sick time, and they're being denied sick time with a doctor's notice and told to go get family medical leave for 2 days of sick time, and denied sick time. I hope that we can come up, like Ms. Wells said, with something today before the end of the year. Again, I don't know what the answer is to this, because we do have an ordinance in place. It seems like just within this division that the system's flawed. I think I'll wait to hear what other council members have to comment. But this is probably one of the worst examples of a management problem I've seen within a division, where we have people denied what they've earned within an ordinance. It's just completely set up for failure, and puts us in a situation to where we're trying to correct something that we can't correct without changing an ordinance. And I think that the management thought that it would go away by just taking it away, and then if we add it back based on the hours on how they do add up, they can't even get their hours in the first quarter of the new year. It's completely set up for failure, as I look at it. And if somebody can show me another way that this is not set up for failure, I would love to see it. But the way I look at it, anything we do right now, it's completely set up for failure. So I think we've got a little work cut out for us today. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawless.
Thank you. This is real quick. I would like a spreadsheet or something that tells us how many, each employee, how many hours they requested in vacation time that was denied.
I'll try to get that put together for you.
Thank you.
Councilmember James.
Thanks, Mayor. I think my question is not really for Commissioner Bennett, but more so probably as someone that deals with the budget, because my question is, if this is, well, first of all, if an employee leaves the government, are they paid out for their vacation when they leave?
They are.
Okay, so then it's clear that that's money that's earned by them from their work hours. So I'm trying to figure out, I mean, obviously there's an ordinance in place, 21-33, that says it doesn't carry over until we get a blue sheet that comes to council that says waive that ordinance and allow this for this particular division. So I guess what I'm wondering is, has there been conversation on the administration side? I mean, obviously, when you look at budget reductions and things to not do, or that are going to cause a negative budget impact, has there been conversation, Mayor, in the administration that you will get this much money if no division brings forward, you'll have this much additional funding based on non-rollover of vacation hours to the next year? So has there been, because the memo from David Lucas said no government employees will get rollover. So I don't think that's really been addressed yet.
I guess I need for you to ask a question again because I'm not sure I followed.
I know, I
exactly
asked like
what
a
you
million
asked.
of them. Okay. Was the memo accurate?
No. More precisely, it was sent without any prior approval.
Okay.
And I think that is the genesis of some of the confusion.
Okay.
And we have talked with Mr. Lucas about that. So.
Okay. And with that, if there were any divisions that were going to ask for that waiver, it would have already been done because we're at our last council meeting tonight.
Presumably, but I am not aware of the issue coming up with other divisions.
Have the division directors shared with you preliminarily that this is going to be their method of a reduction in their budgets?
No.
Okay.
I mean, the thing that I would interject there is this ordinance has been in place since the 70s.
78, I think.
And so the idea that there's this 168-hour cap on vacation time is not something that's new to Urban County government. So I think there has been an understanding that if you don't utilize your vacation time and you wind up at the end of the year with more than 168 hours, you're going to lose whatever the excess was. So it has not been brought forward as some kind of budget solving approach to the financial issues.
Okay. I'm wondering, maybe you know this, Mayor, that's been since the 70s, that ordinance?
That's my understanding.
Have we changed the amount of days that people get off for vacation since that time?
I'm sure we have. I mean, we've changed it once since 2007 that I recall, but I feel confident there have been others.
Yeah, the amount of holiday time has changed. I don't know if the amount of vacation accrual has. We can research it and see, but.
Okay.
Ms. George may be able to address that.
It seems like to me that would be partner legislation that you would need to look at one or the other.
Vacation hours has not changed, holiday has.
Okay. Does the ordinance 2133 address both or only one?
2133?
That was the one referenced earlier. I'm not sure if that's the number or not.
2133 addresses vacation.
Okay. All right. So if council wanted to today to extend through that first quarter, we would just make the motion to extend through the first quarter. Can we do that per division? The same as a divisional director would be able to submit a blue sheet to do that?
Are you talking about for E911?
Yeah.
Yes, we've done that in the past. We've extended their use date past December 31st.
Okay.
And I think we've done that for the past couple of years.
Okay.
But just to be clear on the process, correct me if I'm wrong, that would necessitate approval by ordinance.
Right, it's an ordinance to do that, right.
An ordinance change would require 2 readings,
Okay.
all that.
All right. Thanks, Glenda. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Henson.
Thank you, Mayor. We talk about this cap, and the only thing I'm saying is if it's just not fair to this division. If they're not allowed to take the time, then that cap is not fair to them. And I wanted to tell Tracy that I have reported complaints about the E911 call takers. I've had citizens tell me several times that the call takers are rude, disrespectful, so forth. And in your defense, I say, well, it is probably a very, very stressful job, very close to being just as stressful as police. And if you were working in a stressful job, it would be good to be able to take your vacation time and get away from it. So I really think that we should extend this for 3 months. They probably won't have enough time to take it, but we could, and also I think that this division needs to be looked at in committee. So I'll make a motion. I think the staffing needs to be looked at. It's like if there's a lot of turnover, maybe their hiring process is off. We need to look at if a person is hired to handle those type of calls and they run off screaming or whatever, then we've defeated we've got to have a better hiring process.
Are you making a motion to extend it for 3 months and then put it into committee to look at their staffing and their hiring?
Yes,
their
in
division, in committee?
Well, there's got to be a solution to the staff not being able to take their vacation. It comes up every year, as we've said. So they have to be properly staffed, and we need to look at the hiring processes. So I would move to put that into intergovernmental.
So is your motion to extend it and to, is it twofold?
Right.
Because I was your second, so I was just making sure.
Yeah, two separate motions, I guess.
The motion that's on the floor right now is to refer a review of the E911 staffing and hiring to the Intergovernmental Committee. Is there a second on that motion? Second from Councilmember Crosby. So let's see if there's any debate on that particular issue. Councilmember James.
I'm just not extremely clear because I didn't hear you say what she said. Can you repeat what the motion is again, please?
The motion would be for to place an intergovernmental committee to take a look at the staffing process for the E911 because they have to have the appropriate staff hours to accommodate the employees so they can take their vacation.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
All right. The discussion is now on the motion to refer to intergovernmental. Councilmember Stinnett.
Based on that clarification, that is different from what you said. You said hiring and staffing. There's a big difference. So we're just going to look at their staffing levels, right?
Well, I think that the hiring process may need to be looked at in order to staff it properly. If they're having 9 out of 10 people quit, maybe we would need to look at their turnover, the reason for the turnover, and if the individuals are not being screened properly, then it would be a hiring process, I believe.
I just want to point the hiring process is covered under state statute, so we can't make any changes to that. That was my point. Now,
the training or
the general
the
look
screening,
at the screening, yes, the
correct.
staffing issue. Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
All right, everybody clear on the motion that's on the floor? And those in favor of referring staffing on E911 to Intergovernmental Committee, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now, Councilmember Henson, do you have a second motion about putting an item on the docket?
I wanted to make a motion that we extend the vacation hours, and it has to be for all LFUC? No, okay. Just for the E911 division for 90 days.
The motion would be to amend the docket to put on tonight's meeting docket an ordinance to extend for 90 days. All right? Then we'll... Okay, March 31st, end of the first quarter.
So moved.
And I heard a second. Was it Councilmember Crosby? All right. Any discussion on the motion to amend the docket to add that item to the agenda? Councilmember Myers and Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try to stay on the motions on the table. I'm not going to support this motion for a couple of reasons. One, whatever we do, we need to do for everybody so that it's not just specific to this one group. And I guess what I would do is ask if you would be amenable to amend the motion so that Councilmember Lawless brought up a great point earlier. She asked the question, how many people were denied to get a spreadsheet that scheduled out how many hours were denied for reasons that they needed to stay there and be staff. So what I do is ask if you would be amenable to amend your motion so that any LFUCG employee that this year was denied vacation time because of the need for them to work, and that created a situation where they are going to lose vacation at the end of the year, that those hours be rolled over. And they only be rolled over for the first quarter like the ordinance currently says, and that a part of that is that the manager, the director, is required to submit back to the commissioner and the council an action plan to ensure that those hours are worked during that first, or those hours are taken off during that first quarter so that we don't have this problem moving forward. So moved.
Okay, so you're moving to amend the motion to include all LFUCG employees who have requested but have been denied vacation leave through today? I mean, people who've made the request prior to today?
Correct.
All right. Is there a second to that motion to amend? Hearing none, the motion to amend dies for lack of a second. Okay, we have a second now from Councilmember Crosby. The item on the floor for discussion is Councilmember Myers' motion to amend to add language to the effect that the proposed extension would apply to all FUCG employees who have sought vacation time this year but have been denied it prior to today. Council, we're off the screen right now, so if you'd like to speak to the amendment, let me know. Councilmember Blues, let me know by raising your hand. Councilmember Blues and Councilmember Gordon and Councilmember James.
Well, he can only do his.
I think the spirit of the motion is this, the original motion, that is, that we have a special situation brought to our attention by one unit of government. And in order to sort things out, to try to get a handle on this situation and do justice to these employees, we've agreed to extend the period for yet another year.
No, it's not another year.
Or I'm sorry, that we've agreed to refer the matter to committee, and now are considering whether to considering whether we can resolve this problem within the first quarter of next year. So I'll support the original motion, but in order to give us some time to examine, to re-examine, and to see if we can find a solution.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm basically in agreement with Councilmember Blues. In the past, we have done this for community corrections. We have done it for IT computer services when we were not able to get employees in those jobs and those folks had to work over. I agree that the spirit of the motion is that we have one group that has come to us with 12 out of 20 employees, if I understand the numbers, who've been denied vacation time. That's a pretty high percentage. And we don't know the situation about all of our other employees and all of our other divisions. I would be interested to know, but I think today the appropriate motion is the original one. And I will not be supporting the amendment.
Councilmember James is next, followed by Councilmember Crosby. Again, we're focusing on Councilmember Myers' motion to amend. Councilmember James.
Thanks, Mayor. Councilmember Myers, can you clarify, your motion was not just blanketed, everyone denied, it was saying denied based on staffing levels. Did I understand that correctly?
What the motion is the ordinance says that they can roll over time to the first quarter, but it has to be taken in the first quarter. What this original motion does, and Councilmember Gordon made my point instead of the point she's trying to make. The original motion, what it does is says, we're going to give all these folks all their time again for the first quarter. That doesn't fix this problem. It ends up with the same problem that we currently have. They can't take it all off, or they don't take it all off. Next year, we're going to be right back in the same situation. So what I'm saying is, if the ordinance says that you were able to roll your time over, but you had to take it during the first quarter, if you didn't take it because you didn't request it, you lose it. That's what the ordinance says. If you tried to take it, but the government said you could not take off, that's the point that Councilman Gordon's making with corrections where they were denied vacation, and that's why we let them extend it. In the same way with the people that were working in the STARS program, they were denied vacation, that's why we let them roll it over. So my point is, if we denied time off, let them roll those hours over. If it wasn't denied and they just didn't request it, they lose it just like the ordinance says.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Crosby.
I actually seconded the motion because I did have a question on Councilmember Myers' amendment to it. And I guess my question was, if you are in a different division of government, for example, E911, they have documentation that they were denied, and procedurally, I was just curious as to other divisions, if they're denied time off, would they have the same type of documentation? Because I believe that if you're denied, would you have to be provided with some type of documentation that you're denied, or would it just be, because anybody, they could say, oh, I wasn't allowed to have it. Well, were you just told that, or would you have some kind of documentation? Because I think those are two different things. That was my question, because...
May I try to address that? There is a leave form that is submitted and either approved or denied by the supervisor, so I assume that that form is retained and a part of the record. I would also... The existing ordinance does not allow for a rollover of 90 days. It takes a special action by the council to make that happen. So I would suggest to you that people who worked during the ice storm and people who worked during, sewer line breaks and weekends, and here we are at the 1st of December, I think that, and they haven't asked because the ordinance says use it or lose it. So they haven't asked to carry over. So if you're going to allow for some carryover, you should allow all those people to carry over. The ordinance says you can't carry it over. And if you want to change that, that's certainly okay with us. But I just think it's an issue of fairness for the people who are abiding by the ordinance.
Question again is on Councilmember Myers' amendment. Councilmember Myers.
Can I ask a question? Mr. Kelly, when you just said the ordinance doesn't allow for a rollover, I was referring to the ordinance that the Commissioner spoke about earlier. I guess maybe that was specific to this group last year.
That was a one-time exemption that you provided last year.
And it was an exemption that said you had to use it in the first quarter?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The current ordinance does not allow for carry forward.
Councilmember Lawless.
Over 168 hours. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. First of all, the ice storm was in a limited time. This seems to me like a division or department. It's a day in, day out, 365-day-a-year crisis. And so, yeah, I mean, and I'm grateful to people who worked in the ice storm and all those other things, but that was a 2-week or a 3-week period, not 365 days a year. And that we give them this vacation time, and it is denied. And the fact that this is the 4th year in a row says to me that there is a severe management problem with the department director, Mr. Lucas, who isn't here today because he's on vacation, and that needs to be addressed. It's a systemic problem that goes on. 911 is 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It's not an ice storm. It's not one thing. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Councilmember Myers' amendment? All right, we're ready to vote on the amendment. The amendment, as you may recall, was to include all LFUCG employees who had been denied leave during this year prior to today. Those in favor of Councilmember Myers' motion, please indicate by voting aye electronically. Those opposed, vote nay electronically. Motion fails by a vote of 2 to 10. That takes us back to the original motion by Councilmember Henson to grant a 30-day until March 31st, 2010 for a one-time exemption. Any further discussion on that issue? Councilmember Stinnett.
Still got a practical matter, Commissioner. How are they going to use it? I mean, we're going to grant this tonight. How are they really going to use it? Is anyone going to be allowed to take a vacation day in the next 90 days?
As I said earlier, I don't know. To my knowledge, we haven't looked at it because we hadn't anticipated the carryover. Last year, and I don't know how, I'll qualify this by saying I don't know how many people got to carry time over, but as I recall, at the end of the first quarter, only 2, maybe 3 at the most lost time, and they were nominal hours. So people were able to take time off during that quarter. We'll work as best as we can to get them the time off during this quarter too.
But it's safe to say that some of this time is going to be lost regardless. So for some of the folks that have 3 and 4
Possible.
weeks.
I can't say for sure. As I said, we'll work with them to the extent we can. We can't compromise service to let them off, but we'll try to maintain service to the extent we can and let them off.
And if by granting this tonight, will this time count amongst their total hours, or after 90 days, this extra time goes away no matter what?
After 90 days, this extra time goes away no matter what. Now, during that 90-day period, they'll continue to accrue the time they would have accrued anyway.
The 168. Again.
Well, the 168 carryover, but they'll continue to accrue their 10 or 14 hours, whichever they get, during January, February, and March, in addition to the hours they carried over. So they won't be penalized for that.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I almost didn't think I was going to quite get far enough down the list to talk today. We kept getting on to new motions. It seems like a sort of a structural problem in the way this department's set up. If we were 3 people short than where we were today, they would have an even bigger problem. Sure. Because when you have required staffing and required levels of service, if folks got to be in the chairs and answering the phones, they can't be taken off. And so I don't envy the administration's position in trying to manage this budget in these times. It's just an awful thing to have to try to do. And I commend the administration for doing a great job. It just seems like there are times when we cut to the bone, and this might be further. And so I would encourage the administration to get some new staffing in this department so that the rest of them can take a little breather, because they're all carrying the collective load of running the department. Sure. And if there's not enough of them to let some of them go out and sharpen their axe once in a while, then they're going to be like the wood chopper beating that log in the woods, and I don't have time to sharpen my axe. I got all this wood to cut. And so we need to let them to sort of take some time to go sharpen the axe. And if they're don't have enough staffing to allow them to take vacations, then I think we owe it to them to do that. And it's a difficult budget to manage, and we got to find places to cut back. But I think that I think this department, particularly, all the police and fire come through them, and I think it's important that we be fair to them and allow them to take the vacation that they're going to need to go recharge and be fresh during those late night hours. So, thank you, Mayor.
Question on the floor is whether to amend the docket to include an ordinance granting a one-time 90-day exemption till March 31st, 2010. Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question would be, what about the people who worked on PeopleSoft and all the rest of the other people in government that are going to lose their time, and we're only focusing on one individual department of government?
Any further discussion? Then let's vote. Those in favor of amending the docket to include this item this evening, please indicate by voting aye electronically. Those opposed, vote nay. Motion carries by a vote of 9-3. All right. While we're still on this topic, Ms. Anderson indicated a desire to speak. I don't know if you'd like to do so.
Mayor, are we on public comment now?
Actually, we're still on this whole issue of the E911 pay. Ms. Anderson.
Hi, I'm Carla Anderson. I'm going to begin by just saying this is my 23rd year with the city. And prior to 3 years ago, we didn't have this issue. We didn't have the staffing issue. And since then, with the extensions, I believe we have been able to use all of our rollover vacation that we were allowed by the deadline of April 1st. And in the last couple of years, I think we've been able to do that. I myself have a lot of denials from April 1st through the end of the year, so it's not that we haven't tried to take off. But our main issue is just the inadequate staffing and the shortages that we have. I want to explain to a little bit about how we operate, because most of the people don't know how our division actually works. We're a small division, and prior to 3 years ago, we had a supervisor and 3 dispatchers on every shift. We have 4 shifts, and the rotation, everything worked really well as far as the coverage, and we very seldom ever had a turnover. But since then, most of the time, even though I'm a supervisor, we've been short-staffed for the last 3 years. We've been short or understaffed. I myself don't get to supervise all day. Most of the time, almost every day, I'm usually the third person there, meaning that I'm going to have to man a dispatch or the phone or the radio or something to take a place as a dispatcher. And that's how we've been operating lately. One part of us getting off work, when one person wants off, since we are short, if one person wants off, we can't just get up and leave our seat empty. Somebody has to work overtime and come back and work for us. So our overtime budget is probably rather high, and that's one reason why we can't get off, is we do use a lot of overtime. but that's the only way that we can use our time. And we just have so many people that we even have an option to ask if they can work overtime.
Ms. Anderson, you have about 25 seconds.
Okay. Anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say, was to answer some of those questions that I had heard. So we would appreciate getting the extension. I think we could do our best to try to utilize our time in that.
Thank you.
90 days. Thanks.
Does anyone else have anything further on this general topic? All right. That concludes then the mayor's report. And the only two people who had registered to speak during public comment were the two individuals who have already spoken. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? I have a motion by Councilmember Crosby and a second by Councilmember Martin that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries, and we'll reconvene at 6 o'clock.